Hey guys, what's up? So here we are again with another combat achievement, and this time we are doing the Master Combat Achievement task, not just a ranged weapon, where we take down the Phantom Muspa using only a salamander. And this used to be somewhat of an endurance test. It's gotten a lot easier since Varlamore came out and we have access to the Teku salamander. But yeah, the only damage we can do to Muspa is with a Salamander. Luckily, it can attack with both ranged and magic attack styles. So we will be bringing an interesting, it's pretty budget, but it's a hybrid gear setup of magic and ranged gear. So I have a decent magic and ranged offensive attack style um, when fighting him as he's changing forms. So really quick, yeah, I'm bringing Crystal and Arims. And then I have some other gear just to give me like a little hybrid boost in each attack style, right? So I got Burrow's Gloves. I am bringing a Blood Fury, but it's really just a Fury because it gives magic and ranged bonuses. And finally, I'm bringing the Ring of Shadows, just because it gives a little magic and range bonus as well. The helm is a Slayer helm, but I'm not on task. I think I just got a Zuck task. What do I got right now? Yeah, I think I'm just on a Jad task. So the helmet doesn't matter. You can bring whatever helmet you want. But yeah, let's send it. So this is part of the Earn Your Master Defender Hilt combat achievement series where we earn enough combat achievement points to earn our Master Defender hilt. So if you've been enjoying these guys, if they've been helpful, or if you've been sticking around the channel, throw me that like, throw me that sub, and let's go take down the Muspa. So entering the fight, we're going to see what combat style we need to use, and it looks like because he's melee, we're going to want to start with mage. So we'll throw that mage attack style on. And this is a bit of an endurance test, but you can see right here, there is a fancy little walk I can do to make him always hit 0. So watch this. I'll run back 2, and then back 1. So back 2. Oh, well, we'll do it right here, right? So we're going to run back 2, and then back 1. And that will make him always hit a 0 on us during this melee phase, right? So back 2, and then back 1. It's a little tricky to do, especially with this stupid salamander. But here we go. Back 2 and then back 1, right? And that's going to help us save on some of our supplies. So the melee phase is definitely going to be the phase where we do end up using a few more supplies, especially relative to the ranged phase. Range phase is a good opportunity to heal. We have all these brews with us. We can get our HP all the way back up to full. We can get our prayer back up. And of course, this is why we're bringing 2 range potions, right? The range potions are for this and the final enraged phase, which is a little bit of a DPS check, especially with the salamander, but it's really not that bad. Now, there is one thing to take into account for, and it can bite you in the butt at the very end during the DPS check, and that's where you're placing the spikes. And so you want to kind of place as many as possible on only one side of the arena. You definitely don't want them in like all 4 quadrants of the arena. And if possible, it's good to keep them on only one side of the arena. So we can see right here, I'm kind of keeping them on this east side. But now that he's back in that melee phase, we're going to do that step back 2 and back 1, right? And then step back 2 and then back 1. So it's good to learn how to do this technique because it's going to save a lot of our supplies, right? And if you mess it up, you can see I'm messing it up plenty, but it's not the end of the world. But we can go back 2 and then back 1, right? And it's always going to hit a 0 on us if we do it correctly. Now we have these spikes kind of trailing us, right? And we want to kind of plant them in that same kind of side of the arena that we've been hanging out in and planting spikes at for the most part. And it might not seem important now, but at the end, because we are dealing with the DPS check and our weapon is so weak, this stupid little salamander, that planting those early spikes in just in an initial side of the arena or an initial quadrant, it's going to help us out a lot later on. So here we go. We step back 2 and then back 1. And we're just going to continue on with this pattern until we get it back into the range phase. The melee phase, or I guess the mage phase, whatever you want to call this, it's definitely the more challenging of these two phases that we're going to have to deal with. But if we can make it through that, once we learn that kind of walking pattern to be able to make it through the melee phase of the boss, this range phase is really no-brainer. And like I said before, right, we can use this phase of the fight to get our HP up, get our prayer up, never let your prayer drop, right? And like I said earlier, it used to be more of an endurance test than it is now. But it's gotten a lot easier since we got access to this Teku Salamander. And of course, you're going to want to be changing your attack styles, right? And if you change your attack styles during this mage phase and take a little bit of excess damage, it's really not the end of the world. We have more than enough supplies to be able to beat this boss. You can see right now we've used about 2 brew and he's almost half down. So this is not too bad. It used to be a lot harder than it was, or rather I should say the endurance test part of it was a lot harder, or it used to be. But it's still a pretty long fight. I don't know how long this is going to be. This might be an 8 or a 9-minute fight or something like that. It's definitely a longer fight. But if we can just keep our cool and make it through it, this is an easy Grandmaster achievement task. So he does have a couple special attacks that he's going to use, but they're really not a big deal. Don't let your prayer drop like I did right there, right? There's a lot going on, especially when you're trying to focus on kiting this guy during his melee phase. But if you're not able to make it to the safe spot tile, you're going to have plenty of brews to be able to survive this entire boss. So you can just try to dodge them. If you get hit by one, it's really not the end of the world. It's not going to be the game changer between whether or not you can do this. As you can see right here, I am in very budget gear. So if you have better mage gear or range gear than I do, it just becomes that much easier still, right? But this little walk technique that we're doing right here, this is probably the most important thing in the fight to learn. And we can play sloppy, we can take additional excess, but let's talk about those spikes really quick. We see that we have a lot of spikes on this side of the arena, and that is exactly what we want. We want to keep the spikes on only one side of the arena, if possible. And I've already mentioned it before, but that's because it's going to be a little bit of a DPS check come the end of the fight. So we're getting him close to the prayer phase, and because we can only use a salamander, we are just going to endurance our way through the through the prayer phase, the smite phase once we get there. And it's getting pretty close, so let's get our mage gear back on. Switch to our mage attack style, and we're going to try to push him right over the threshold so we can finally start dealing with something new, which is going to be the smite phase. And the smite phase is really easy. The smite phase is really nothing to worry about because we're just going to be endurancing our way through it. Still trying to keep spikes on one side if possible, but I think we've done such a good job in the early half of the fight that we don't necessarily need to be worrying about spikes too much anymore, but we do need to be worried about that big blast attack that he's going to use when he enters his smite phase. So we need to be ready to hide behind some sort of pillar, and it looks like we actually have one of those spikes next to us right now, so we should be able to take advantage of that once he enters this smite phase. But here we go, we'll get ourselves completely healed up because the end of the fight is coming around. And this is probably going to be the most uninteresting part of the fight, and that's where we just deal and make it through this little smite phase. It's just going to be very tiny chip damage, so let's hide behind that spike. And that's fine. And it looks like now he's in the smite phase, but we can't be using a crossbow. And I'm not sure if we can actually use our prayer smite or one of the other options to deal with this phase of the fight. So what we're really going to do is we're just going to endurance our way through it and make sure we pray correctly along the way. Now let's go hang out in this corner down here where all the spikes are. And that's because if we can keep the spikes on this side, we're going to have to worry even less about the potential DPS check that is coming up once his little shield is down. So you can see that shield drains pretty slowly, but as soon as this is down, we're in the home stretch of the fight. We don't need our offensive prayer on right now. We can actually turn our offensive prayer off just to save those extra prayer points, especially if for some reason you're running a little low on your super restores. And another thing is you don't, just because you brew down, you don't need to get your stats back up right away right now. So save those super restores until your prayer actually needs it. Just because that will save you a dose or two, especially with your offensive prayers off. There's no point in just trying to boost your stats back up because you're going to be brewing down occasionally to try and stay at 115 HP. You don't need to stay at 115 HP for this fight, but it's nice in case you accidentally miss that mage prey, right? You don't want to get one shot at this point in the fight since we're almost there. And it's going to be good to enter that enrage phase with our HP very high. It's not going to really be necessary, but it's nice because it's going to take potential mistakes or potential accidents into account, right? But it looks like he's only got 15 health left on his shield. And as soon as that goes down, some spikes are going to spawn. And we're going to enter the very final phase of the fight. So it's getting low. So as soon as our HP drops just a little bit more, we'll get it back up to the full 115. Now's a good time to do that. And now we're actually going to get our stats completely full. And we're going to put that range potion on. And let's throw our rigor on as well. And here we go. We're entering the final phase of the fight, where all we have to do is beat her before the spikes overwhelm the field. And we can see this is why we wanted to camp all those spikes at the bottom of the field, because you don't want them closing in on you from all sides. We only got that one set of spikes up top, and that's not going to be the make it or break it. That's going to be really easy to deal with. But you can see if they're all stretched at the bottom, they're only going to move like one little row at a time. And Musp is down to his final 70 HP. And we're just trying to finish her up really quick before these spikes end up completely overwhelming us. But it's not looking like an issue at this point. If for some reason you end up brewing down, make sure you drink another dose of your range pot. But it looks like Muspa is going down right now with one more XP drop, and the combat achievement is complete. And that is called More Than Just a Ranged Weapon, and it looks like it's a Master Combat achievement. So that's 5 more points on our way to getting our Master Defender Hilt. So I hope you had fun. I hope you learned a lot. Good luck on your endurance test. I know this is a pretty long fight, but it's not too hard, especially with the Teku Salamander. So have fun, good luck, and I will see you boys in the next one. Peace.